Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement in lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Jonathan, welcome to Lawyers Who Learn. Really excited to dive into not only what it's like to be in insurance defense, but specifically you have a lot of great stories of things that you've done most recently that I think will give light to the theme of how you learn and grow in your career. So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. It's great to be here. And I want to say thanks to you. Thanks to everyone who's putting this together. Really excited to dive in.
You are a Lawline faculty member, which we appreciate. You have two courses live on the site. I think one is on medical malpractice, and the other, if I could look it up real quick, it is right here. It's the strategic depositions, building your case before trial. So I love that you're teaching in addition to sharing and actually practicing. And I'm going to dive into that in a little bit of why you decided to teach and what the value you get, because I believe teaching is the best form of learning. But before we go there, I would love to dive into sort of some of the pre-questions that you answered about things that you've done recently, because I'm super interested in learning more about them. And let's start with this. You love philosophy and you use that. And so like I said to you, I've had maybe 6 or 7 podcast interviews on this where people share how Stoicism, and they share the books and Marcus Aurelius and Ryan Holiday and all his books and how it's been transformative them. And I would just love to hear, I could talk about this all day. I could have a podcast just on philosophy and Stoicism. I would love to hear, in Greek philosophy, you just mentioned that. Tell us your journey and how what books you've read, where you're using that in your law practice, in your life, so we can learn and grow in this area.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And over the years, I've been really happy to see more and more people getting into these kind of things. I went to Barnes and Noble for the first time in a few years. I guess they're redoing some of their stores. So wanted to check it out. And they have a whole section, Stoicism, the entire shelf. So
it's funny you say that, because the one in my area is closed down now. So I guess they'll rebrand. So we'll see what it looks like, and hopefully there'll be a Stoicism section.
No, exactly. And to be perfectly honest with you, it just grew gradually. I remember the middle of winter and COVID times. It must have been the winter of 2020 into 2021. We were still working from home. I would go on a nightly walk every day with my dog around Buffalo and started listening to podcasts. And few of them that I was interested in spoke specifically about philosophy and other related topics. And that kind of piqued my interest. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is an interesting thing to think about. And one thing that I've really realized recently is that our training during the day and our day-to-day practice of law really equips your mind to dive into those arguments, because as a lawyer, we're dissecting arguments, listening to different points of view about evidence. And that's, I think, exactly what philosophy and other kind of related topics can be. So it started off just personal interest, way to kill time during COVID. And since then, I've gotten more and more interested in the topic. I think there's never been more ways to learn. Certainly that's the case in law now that we have programs like Lawline that offer around the clock CLEs, there are podcasts, YouTube videos.
I think for me, what's always been, there's things that you learn that you don't realize that come from Stoicism. And it's like the only two things you can control is how you think and how you feel. And everything else goes back, and you can go back to, I don't know if you've gotten so far into it where you've read the book Meditations, or the journal, I should say, from Marcus Aurelius, or if you've read any of Ryan Holiday's books. How deep have you gone into the journey of understanding, whether it's Greek philosophy or Stoicism or any areas, just any, and I know I didn't ask you to do like full prep on what you're going to talk about, but any specific examples that come to mind as I shared those two that you think somebody who is listening to us has never dove into Stoicism besides hearing the term before, where they should start?
Yeah, what a great question. So I'd agree. Stoicism is like very popular now. Like I said, you see it in all the bookstores. Marcus Aurelius, like you said, is a really great source to read up on.
Did you read that book, his journal?
Yeah, the Meditations. I think that's
it's very hard to
particularly read. It's hard to read, but I think it's also a good maybe spot to get into it because a lot of it's like aphorisms, almost like sayings that you can remember. You don't,
Yeah.
it seems like you don't have to read the entire thing through.
And I think Ryan Holiday has been a big influence on Stoicism and bringing it to the mainstream. Have you read
Sure.
any of his books?
No, I haven't. I've obviously heard the name. It sounds like you'd certainly recommend him.
Oh, so yeah, so he's the one who's really brought it. He's on now 7 or 8 books on different areas of Stoicism and helping make it easier out there. So it's funny. I just assumed that's where you heard it. So you heard of the podcast. Any chance you remember the name of the
I
podcast?
sure do. Yeah, it's called Philosophize This. So I'll put in a plug. I think like that, the host in that show was very approachable, broke things down into sort of everyday language. And it was more or less a survey of starting with the Greek philosophers, going up through present day Heidegger, thinkers like that. So it's really been something I've been really very interested in. I think
And are you
as
still?
lawyers,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say as lawyers, I think it's especially valuable, and that's something we can obviously delve into the details as we get into the topic.
No, let's do it now. What do
Yeah.
you tell me? What are you thinking when you say that?
Yeah. So I think during the day, like I said, I'll turning on our critical thinking and analyzing cases, plotting strategy, deciding what direction to take the case, as well as just, I think, how to conceptualize the entire thing. Okay, what's the narrative that we're going to be pursuing in this case? That's always important. And I think those skills that you develop when you're listening to something else like a philosophy or even a CLE on another legal topic, it's really important to, I think, flex those muscles outside of the courtroom. I almost look at it as like a gym for your mind, more or less. I feel every day, as much as I can, I try to go to the gym to work out your body. But then I think also if you can download some philosophy, some sort of other education.
Are you saying so downloading is like passively reading and doing that? Is there anything that you're actively doing, and maybe not, to because you can read about working out, but that's not the same thing as working
That's so
out.
true. Yeah, I know that story all too well.
You can buy a
But
treadmill, doesn't mean you'll use it.
or a Peloton in my case.
You and everybody else.
Yeah. Speaking of COVID, but no, yeah, like I said, I got into it just casually. That's a really good word, just passively downloading things on my walks, listening to podcasts. There are a few kind of topics that really did interest me. Like you mentioned, like the ancient Greek Stoic philosophy was interesting. More recently, I've been reading up on Martin Heidegger, which is another interesting way to carve up the world.
What's the name again? I didn't mark.
So he was big in the early 1900s, German.
Okay. And what have you learned? What's interesting on him?
Good question. So I think like he was really big in sort of phenomenology, taking the world and being as a sort of starting point. Like, what does it mean to be in the world? How do we as human beings conceptualize things? How do we, relate to one another and to other objects? It's just an interesting way to look at the world. And I think that helps as a lawyer because that same sort of thinking outside the box, looking at the world in different ways, that can really, I think, help you in your day-to-day practice.
Let's shift direction for a moment. Before I dive into some of the things you had written about, you had said to me you had some ideas on with things to talk about here, but I want to see, were there things besides of what you prepared ahead of time that are in your head when you think of lawyers who learn that you don't get to talk about as much, that you wish if you could tell people about your learning and your growth journey, you could tell them you would want to go into this topic and dive into that. And I just want to see if there's something there that we can go on that path. That if not, then we'll go a different
Sure.
direction. Just want to see.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I've also been interested in lately is language learning. So I had a trip to Germany in August, and beginning of the year, I thought I want to make the most of it. I'm going to try to learn at least a little German, a few words. So I started with that, and as I got into it, I thought, oh, this is actually interesting. It takes you out of your day-to-day concerns, your day-to-day worries, and gives you, again, it's practice, I think, for the language parts of your mind. I tried to pick topics that I knew something about, but I wanted to grow more myself and maybe learn more.
100.
So
That's you write there's a famous quote to some degree, like you write the book that you were meant to read,
Mhm.
that you need for yourself. if it was a 1 hour program, if you had to guesstimate how many hours of full prep between zero, like the start to the slides to the practice of it, how many hours do you think you put into an hour program if you had to guess?
I would say my routine would be usually Sunday afternoon. The football game, the Bills would be on, or something like that. That's where I would start doing my slides a lot of times. That was my routine. So I'd start with that, maybe 3, 4 hours to at least come up with some initial
Yeah.
ideas. I like the low stress setting of just sitting at home watching something. Because I think with learning, it's really important to have a sense of curiosity with it. Going back to our discussions earlier, I'd taken Spanish in high school and in college a little, but it always felt like something you have to do,
Yeah.
as opposed to something I wanted to do.
Well,
Whereas like something like preparing for a presentation on a topic that I really feel I want to learn more about made a big difference because I was interested in it. Similar to now I'm trying to learn German, studying some philosophy. It makes so much of a difference if you can actually be interested in the material and curious in what's being said. And I think going back
but
to,
just, yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say, going back to your point about AI too, I think that's why it's so important to keep up with giving in-person presentations, going to in-person presentations, CLEs, because there's something about an actual person, even if it's across
Yeah.
the internet, making a point. Like, for instance, I just noticed myself putting my hand up. I don't think AI can gesture, can't change its tone of voice.
It's getting pretty good with
Well, maybe I'm speaking too soon.
yeah, so we'll see where that goes. So maybe it sounds the number that I have in my head, and obviously once you have a program, you don't have to do much work, but maybe to create a 1 hour CLE on a topic that you're familiar with but still want to learn, maybe 10 hours for 1 hour, about between the initial slides to fixing it to the back and forth, maybe one quick run through. And
Yeah, that sounds about right.
and that's 10 real hours of work. And like to some degree, those are billable hours if you're doing them during the day, or like to your point, when you want to learn and grow, sometimes you have to do it during the football game on Sunday because actually there's an argument to be made. Your mind is in that zone, that Zen, that flow state where the 9 to 5 workday, it's really hard to get into that flow state because you have all the things coming at you that, or you
Constant
think,
emails,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
People coming into your office.
Let's
Yeah, no,
focus
I
on
agree.
2 more topics before I let you go back to work. But this is fun, so maybe we can do it longer.
For sure.
One, books. So we just launched last week. We haven't really even promoted it yet. Something called the reading list. It is on the Lawyers Who Learn. It is a searchable book directory by topic for every book that a guest has recommended on this podcast. So right now there's about 95 in there. It's searchable, has a link to Amazon, and it has the why you are recommending it. And we
Excellent.
use, so this is, and moving forward, I'll give people more notice. So it just kind of happened organically. But you take a moment if you want to look at your Kindle, look at your Audible, or whatever it is. What is 1 to 2 books that you would recommend that has been impactful for you in the growth of your career?
Yeah, wow, what a good question. Like I said, I've been interested in philosophy lately and reading. This is something that I've just been reading recently. I don't know if it's one of I'd say my best books of all time, but I guess it's so part philosophy, part personal development, personal growth. Atomic Habits, maybe you've heard about it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, but I just read that recently and it makes a lot of really good points. So one thing that I took away from it was the practice of making micro gains, the idea that instead of making one grand gesture to improve your career in one fall swoop or your personal life, making
Well,
small incremental changes that kind of compound, like compound interest, that really changed my perspective on things.
the good thing about being online is when I have to sneeze, I can mute it.
Yeah, exactly.
From what I can remember from the book, it's about one of the things that makes it easy is you take an existing habit that you have and then you build tasks on that habit.
Exactly.
So if you have a habit of meditating every morning for 10 minutes, okay, can you then, since you're already doing that habit, do a yoga session or do a post on LinkedIn that sort of comes to you, or something that you build on top so you can build on those areas? And is that is that task-based thinking that you're talking about right now?
Yeah, oh, 100%. And in my time studying German this year, preparing for the trip, but in also just learning it for fun, I came across this term Zeitgestaltung, which
Okay.
literally means time structuring. And it's a German word that the concept behind it is that there's Zeitgestaltung, and then there's also Freizeitgestaltung. So free time structuring as well as just your regular time. And I think that sort of dovetails with the atomic habits. I guess an example from my life would be the philosophy podcasts that I listened to earlier. So I already had the habit of walking my dog every day when I got home from work. And on top of that, you can stack your learning, either a podcast or audiobook, things like that, review if you're learning language, words in your head. So I think that's a great practice.
Let's end on what you're passionate about. And one of the things that you had shared with me before the interview. Let's see how passionate you are. Let's see where you're passionate about right now. Because
Sure.
what is an area of something or habits or things that most people don't know about you that you're passionate about doing?
I think this might apply to a lot of people in our field, but I'm really interested lately in personal growth because I saw this video on YouTube that kind of blew my mind. And without overselling it, it was this older like science professor. He was probably like in his early 80s. He looked like the grouchiest person you'd come across, a curmudgeon. I don't know why this was recommended to me, but the title was something like "People do not understand the concept of exponential growth." And I clicked on it, just what the heck is he talking about? And the way he explained it was actually interesting. So I've never been a math person. It was never my real strong suit, but it's for people in the audience, if I'm explaining this improperly, do let me know. But apparently the concept of exponential growth is that sort of like compound interest. If you continue to grow, add a little bit, then and grow off of that, you're growing from a sort of larger baseline. And if, for instance, if we want to make a work example, your caseload or your revenues by 2% a year, every year, if you're growing 2%, you're growing off the last year's increased number. So it's not just a sort of linear growth that can be achieved, but
Like
rather
compounded interest in your bank account.
exactly like that. I understand. So that's
So
how I think about it.
awesome. Yeah, maybe if you can find that video afterwards, send it to me and I'll put it in the description of the pod
Oh,
because I'm
definitely.
interested to see because I'm what because just watching something that can spark your imagination to other areas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so interesting how that works. I also read this book relatively recently, which I would recommend. It was by, I believe his name was Rick Rubin. It's called The Creative Act. And this guy was really interesting. He's not a lawyer. He was, I think, a music producer. He worked with some of the top musical acts out in LA, music performers. But he had a really interesting take. And one thing he said was that you don't know what's going to be fuel for your next good idea. You could just be like me, for instance, like I was just scrolling through YouTube and then led me
Well,
serendipitously to
well,
that.
and that's what
You
this
never know.
podcast is for me.
Yeah,
I get to ask interesting questions to interesting people that you can't normally do on when you watch a YouTube video. And so
100%.
I love that journey of hearing what you're saying and going through a path to figure out the nuggets that have helped you grow and that will help others grow by listening to your experience. So I appreciate that. What I was talking
100%.
about was classical music, which you had shared that you liked. And I love that because I think there's different things that come about from, for example, when I work, I listen to music with no lyrics, but I didn't know is that something you're constantly doing as
Yeah,
well?
I was going to say that's exactly what I do. That's because I never growing up wasn't particularly into classical music, but as I started to work, I had the exact same kind of feeling that I wanted something in the background, no lyrics. So I started listening to different composers. When I was in Germany this past summer, I went to the Bayreuth Festival, which is Richard Wagner in Bavaria, and I actually thought that as I was listening to some of the music, that you could compare it to a case because this composer, he had a lot of different, like it was a huge orchestra. There was this one section was doing this theme, this other section was doing maybe something else musically, but it all fit together into a kind of an overall melody. And I think you can look at a case that way. Like there's the all the different parts of it that are moving at the same time. There's the discovery, the fact finding, there's a narrative, construction. It's
Yeah.
all moving at the same time, sometimes a different tempo, but it converges into
Do
one.
you have a favorite classical or something you listen to often, or song, or
Oh,
anything that comes to mind?
yeah. Oh, that's a good question. After going to the festival, I do like Richard Wagner. Some of the,
Okay, I'll
some of
take a
the
look.
overtures are good, powerful. Oh, I think like Mozart is nice to listen to,
Yeah,
Bach. Good instrumental because some of it can be energetic and
yeah.
drive you on. So like I think
I,
of myself in the morning with coffee, listening to something like that, it gets you up.
yeah, I remember there was this research finding when I was in high school that said if you listen to Mozart or Bach or classical music before a big exam, it will increase your ability to do well in exams. So one of my friends would always do that as a joke. But once you take the lyrics out of a song, I listen to on Spotify, it's popular pop songs with no lyrics played instrumentally,
Oh
and it
yeah,
just gets it's not classical music, but it is good and it helps me go. So I think you've shared so many great nuggets, and I appreciate all us you take allowing us to go through your journey of growth. And of course, you're still in it as we all are. So it'll be great to see how you continue to grow. We both
100%.
we didn't talk about it, but we both did graduate from GW, and there's that. I love being in DC, and it's a great
Yeah, I just saw that we connected on LinkedIn, I know
yeah.
recently, and I was
Yeah.
like, "What? GW?"
Yeah. And I looked and when
Alumni.
I was like, oh, 2007. It just reminds me like 99 is a long time ago, but I still,
Um,
yeah, but it's all good. Like I have seniors in high school who are now going to college, applying to colleges.
oh, how exciting!
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
how old are your kids?
So they're seniors who are actually, they're pretty young for their grade, but they're 16. They're twins, boy, girl twins, and then a seventh grader. So you have kids?
No, not yet, just
Okay.
the dog.
All right.
But
So maybe someday you'll have kids who go to GW or go through this process, but it's been, yeah. It's so when you have kids who are going to college, that's when you realize full circle. Because
mhm.
college is like college. And it just 20 years go by really quickly.
Oh, I feel like it was like in my mind just a few years
Yeah.
ago. You're
Totally.
probably the same way, but like now you're like,
And
what?
I
No,
don't
my
think it
kids
ever,
are
when
gone.
I talk to my dad who's 80, he says the same thing. So at least that gives contrast or whatever. That doesn't change ever. So I think it's a good thing. As long as you're in good health,
Oh
you,
yeah,
you feel that the downside is if you don't, in my mind, if you don't properly think ahead, you're gonna have having the same thoughts in your head for 20 years, thinking that you're still a few years out of college, or you're like, oh wow,
right.
it's been 35 years, whatever that is.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Did
But
you have any with your daughters going to college? Did you have any advice for them?
so it's boy girl twins.
Boy, I'm sorry.
Not totally. Yeah. Yes and no. So I just did a comedy routine for the first time. I'll send you the
Oh,
video. It's
really?
on YouTube.
Awesome.
And they actually ended up going to the same high school that I did. And the joke of the comedy routine was that when I was a junior in high school, I ended up cheating on a test that was the hardest test in our class. And I didn't get caught, or they knew I did it, but they didn't get me in trouble. And because of
Ooh.
that test, it brought up my entire GPA high enough that I was able to get into GW. And
Oh man.
that's where I met my wife. And that's that. And so the joke was when they asked me advice of how to do well in school or in college, I say, when you have a test, choose your seat wisely.
Be strategic. Yeah. That's so
um,
funny.
so yeah, so like that. But for me, I think the one thing I would say when I think about school and higher education system, there's many areas that it's currently failing, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And I think the fundamental purpose of school is to prepare students to be leaders and members of society in a positive, effective way.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind them of that, because if you go to college with the same mentality that you went to high school, which is let me get as many high grades as possible and just focus on getting to that part, I just think you're missing the point, is one. Two, you mentioned before about going on YouTube and learning what you want to learn versus what you have to. Too often, I think some colleges don't, because what we've visited 25 colleges the past
Sure.
year is
Oh man.
the colleges that still force students to take required classes like they're in high school. I wish they didn't, because it's okay. Then you're just doing things that you don't. I'd rather college be 100% of the courses you're taking are because that you choose to take those courses versus you have to take X and you have to take Y, because
Yeah.
that creates the same sort of mentality. And now AI is completely changing the game.
Sure.
Students are using AI for their exams or their essays. Teachers are using it to grade it. And the costs are out of control.
Right.
You didn't ask me this question, but I'm just going off, but many large universities are like funds with endowments of billions and billions of dollars that the students go that are with student loans that are usually funded by the government. And there's the focus of the school is making sure that they get the highest ranking in U.S. World and No Report, and they have the least amount that they accept in, so they can be that much more exclusive. And you have to pay fully before you even get one class. So the outcomes are not connected to where most businesses are. As a lawyer, you don't get paid until at least besides the retainer, until you perform. And that is where I am interested in having an impact when I think about the next 20 years. I'm not sure where to start. What I do know is Lawline's parent company, which we renamed, is Further Ed. So maybe I'll use this podcast to say I will make a difference in helping, because
making history, people.
Yeah. With kids going to school, I want to make sure like they're getting the best return on their investment, because AI is changing so quickly.
I think it's so true. And I think in today's landscape, how you use AI is going to be really determinative long term. I think it can be used obviously as a good tool. And if you use it in the right way, it can really improve your understanding, your efficiency. But I think it could also be used in other unproductive ways, people falling in love with the chatbots and things. So maybe less of that, more of the using it to grow.
There's really, I won't even go, but there's much more dire consequences. Students have committed suicide, and
of course,
and when they looked into the chatbot history, the chatbot was actually encouraging them to not tell anyone about it. So there's many sides to that. We're all trying to learn and grow. CleoCon, I don't know if Cleo,
yes,
that episode just aired today. The CleoCon was last month. I interviewed him at the conference. His keynote was unbelievable. It's combining the practice of law and the business of law using AI. I could see the end of the billable hour actually maybe happening, but who knows? I recommend anybody who's listening to this watch that, and I'll share the link with you as well, Jonathan. Thank you.
What an interesting topic. And as we're sitting here, I remember the advice my dad gave me.
Oh, tell me.
When I was going off to college. Now that's coming up on 20 years ago, believe it or not. I remember he sat me down outside. It was during the summer. Had a drink for me, a drink for himself. And he sat me down and he said, "John, when you're going to college, just remember, for every 2 beers, 1 water." Okay. So that's the advice I got, and it served me pretty well.
Water and Advil. That transfers. Yeah. No, I've hit the stage where I will only have one. I barely drink anymore, but if I do drink, I'll have a 1 drink a night policy, and that helps a lot. And then folks,
I know.
Good advice from your dad. It's a good way to end the podcast. And thank you so much for being a faculty member, for taking the time to do this today. And I hope to continue the relationship with you beyond this podcast.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you so much. And
thanks for anybody who stayed this far. And we appreciate you. All right. Speak to you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye now.